This is Michael Popok. It's After Dark. Do you know where your legal AF is? Speaking of AF, what is going on in New York in front of an appellate court about whether they are going to reduce the amount of the fraud judgment that was obtained by the people of the state of New York through the New York Attorney General against Donald Trump? 10 years of persistent fraud. He rips off the people of the state of New York for almost $500 million. And 5 justices in New York are thinking, maybe that number's too big. It's such a big number. What do we do with it? It seems to be really gigantic. Are we able to do this under the statute? Yes, you are. You're able to do it under the fraud-busting statute of New York law in the hands of the sheriff of Wall Street, Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. We talk about the oral argument that just happened and our take on it and our read on it on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen.
We've been covering from day one the civil fraud case against Donald Trump, quite literally from before it was even a civil fraud case, when it was a civil investigation being performed by the AG. We covered all the investigatory steps that were being taken, the pre-filing depositions. Then, of course, we talked about the case, the trial. We went through it all. And now we're at the appeals. Donald Trump, if he loses, is going to have to pay a judgment in the range of $500 million. I mean, he's already lost with the post-judgment interest accruing every day. That's what he would face. There's a judgment entered against him. The appellate division heard oral arguments, and I think it was a mixed bag, to be fair. There was a lot of judges who thought the number may be too high. But Popok, you practice in New York. You know that appellate division well. People come here for the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly, Yeah,
happy to. Thank you. So I listened to the oral argument. I also talked to some people in advance, including former judges in and around New York about it to get kind of ready. We talked afterwards, and this is the takeaway. And you set it up just perfectly. It's the $456 million disgorgement order judgment by Judge Engoron, finding that Donald Trump, the Trump family, and the Trump organization, except for Ivanka, committed persistent fraud, as that term is used, under a unique New York statute. We call it Executive Law 63-12. Talk about granular, which is just a way for whoever's sitting in the Attorney General's office at the time and to have a robust superpower to police and be the watchdog of financial markets, the business community, and Wall Street, because New York is the financial powerhouse and capital of the world. And so you would think that the Attorney General of that state would have that kind of power. And that's sort of a trade-off, because the Attorney General in New York has very limited, almost no criminal prosecution power, unlike other Attorney Generals around the country. But she does have this. And this is the one that everybody has used, whoever's been Attorney General, Schneiderman, Spitzer, it's often a stepping stone to the governorship, the Attorney General position in New York. And so they have been the police watchdogs of it. And as a result, there doesn't need to be a victim necessarily. You can just do bad things and tilt the playing field in your favor. And even if the other person on the other side doesn't catch it or isn't technically hurt, like in a normal fraud case, you've still violated the law. It's sort of like, I'm thinking about this now in my Wall Street background, it's sort of like violating the Securities and Exchange Commission laws or the CFTC laws or the laws of FINRA, another regulator for Wall Street. And there doesn't have to be a victim on the other side. I mean, certain types of fraud do, but other just technical violations of the rules, because you tried to give yourself an advantage or you didn't play by the rules, gets you in trouble. Same thing here. They never quite wanted to understand that on the Trump side. So Engoron, after listening to dozens and dozens of witnesses and thousands and thousands of, his words, a mountain full of evidence in 6 weeks, with experts for Donald Trump and for the New York Attorney General's office, entered his order. It was around Christmas time. He took a break of about a month. And in January of last year, he issued his order, and he said that Donald Trump lied about his personal financial statement and inflated the value of his assets, used reverse engineering, working with Michael Cohen, our fellow podcaster and friend, and other people like Alan Weisselberg, who's gone to jail twice now, having worked for Donald Trump and lied about it, and then just said, I want to be a $4 billionaire today. Make that the number. And like, well, we can't do that, boss, because we don't have enough assets and they're not valued that high. Well, just use an eraser and a pencil and just increase the number. Okay. That's sort of the scheme. It wasn't that people think that Donald Trump's, I know he likes to stand in front of his audience like, I came up with this idea about a sinking electric boat and whether I should let it sink or I should be eaten by a shark. You know, I talked to people from MIT. This wasn't that bright of a plan. I mean, anybody can come up with this. Just change the numbers. So the final result is what we call disgorgement, which is a fancy way of saying that the court orders you to disgorge or rip away profits and amounts of money that you earn that you should not have earned. We call them ill-gotten gains. You gained it in an illegal way. It should be coughed up. In this case, given to the people of the state of New York, because the New York Attorney General is on the other side. And so that disgorgement amount, he calculated it property by property, transaction by transaction, because Donald Trump lied to his counterparties. And that totaled $456 million. That is now running with interest at $100,000 a day. It's something a day. That's $3 million or more a month. Okay. So he'd like to stop that. That's why it's up to almost like $490 million right now. Now, the way that the appellate courts work in New York, the appellate division first department that sits in Manhattan handles all the first level appeals, criminal or civil. That's why the sentencing issue for Donald Trump and the other criminal case is going to also go to the same court, but just a different rotating panel of judges. 5 justices hear the cases. And I will tell you as a practitioner in New York for over 30 years that nobody gets a judgment of a dollar amount and rests easy until the automatic almost appeal happens and you go through the meat grinder of the first department and you hope that a lot of what you got awarded to you by a jury or a judge comes out the other side. They are notorious for taking their blue pen or red pen and striking off categories of damages. I will tell you that in 30 years, I've never been given more money by the panel. I've never like, well, Mr. Popok, you should have got $5 million more for your client. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Put that down. No, it's always, well, the judge calculated the interest wrong. The judge, this category of damages wasn't available, or that we lop it off 10%, 20%, 30%. So we were expecting a haircut. This same panel, led by Justice Renwick, who is he's like the chief judge of the first department, and others, had already about 5 or 6 months ago given a break to Donald Trump and said, because he said, I can't come up with the $500 million, the bond. I'm in trouble. They said, put up $175 million. It's the same panel. Now, some people thought, oh shit, they're going to reduce the whole thing to 175. That's not quite how I read it, but that is a floor here of 175. Having listened to the oral argument, I was most troubled by a comment made by Justice Moulton, who could be the person that ends up writing the ultimate decision. Really smart, really methodical, quiet person, but the big brain, if you will, on that panel. And when he led with a question to continue the troubling theme to the Miss, I can't remember her last name here. I think it's Jay. It'll come to me in a minute. The advocate, the appellate advocate for the New York Attorney General. He started the question with, I am troubled by the size of the judgment. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this. That's not a good start. Now, I've had plenty of appellate panels that have been fiery, and I've left there thinking, wow, do I still have my back pocket? Are they still there? And then I get home, a month later, and the order comes out, wait, I won? Or vice versa. I was like, wow, I did great. They loved me. And then I get the order and it's like, nope, you lost. So it's hard sometimes to tell, but I don't like the fact that Moulton, because you got to get the 3 votes. It's a majority. So if it's Moulton, Renwick, and one other person, I'll tell you who it's not going to be. It's not going to be Friedman, because Justice Friedman is the person that kept siding with Trump over and over again. Every time an emergency application was filed and Friedman was sitting around, he was like, yep, I'll grant that. And then it would be reversed by the full panel. So he was already not only throwing softballs at Donald Trump's lawyers, he was blowing kisses. Here you go. What about that? Don't you think that? Yeah, I think that. So that he's going to be an outlier. Question is, can Renwick and Moulton pull one other vote over, Rosado or one of these other people, and preserve the judgment? Short answer, bottom line, I think the order does not get the decision, the judgment does not get tossed in its entirety. I think they come up with a number that is lower than 546 million and higher than 175. If I were a betting man, I'd say, I don't know, $200 or $300 million. Not nothing, not chump change, but the only thing that left me a little bit troubled is they were questioning the use of this same statute that I just described in this context. They kept saying, well, if it's sophisticated parties on both sides, haven't we gone too far with the use of 63-12 as the law? And to which the lawyers for the New York Attorney General was like, why should he get benefited? Because his fraud scheme was so successful and he stole so much money. Is that a new defense? It's just too big of a number for the appellate court to consider. It's just too big. It can't be what the statute intended. I mean, the statute is made in the 50s, but the actions are today. And just because he's a super criminal doesn't mean he should get a break. I mean, that was sort of her argument. So we're going to wait, and it's going to come relatively soon. I think this decision will come out before the election, before November 5th. Usually it's about a month, 6 weeks. It's a little complicated here. We could get it. We could be talking about this ruling in October. And the loser, whoever that is going to take an appeal to the top court in New York, which is the Court of Appeals. And even if there's a winner, like they affirm the judgment, but they cut it down to size, the Attorney General could say, no, that number's not right. The 500 was right. Let's go. And we could have cross appeals. Donald Trump could say, the whole thing should have been tossed, and she could be appealing and saying the number's not high enough. And then all those issues go to the Court of Appeals, which is the last stop on the train. No federal involvement, no Supreme Court involvement. That will be the last. And if the judgment in any form gets affirmed, 30 days later, he's got to pay it. Whatever the amount is, not the bonding company. The bonding company is only if he doesn't pay. And if he pays it, he pays it. If he doesn't pay it, she's going to start selling off his assets, starting, I hope, with Trump Tower. Welcome back. Find out what 40 million people a month already know, that Legal AF is the home of law and politics commentary and analysis like no other. And we do it so much and so often and with such acclaim and demand that we got a new channel. I'm going to be curating Legal AF MTN in collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, bringing you all the stories and commentary and commentators that you've come to know and love and expect. Free subscribe right now, Legal AF MTN for MeidasTouch Network, and help us build this pro-democracy channel in collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF podcast, Wednesdays and Saturdays on this YouTube channel for MeidasTouch Network and wherever you get your audio podcasts from, until my next exclusive content only on Legal AF MTN, including a new show called Unprecedented. Yes, once a week, we're going to be looking top to bottom, side to side, 360 degrees about the United States Supreme Court. You'll know it in real time, but only if you join Legal AF MTN and its exclusive new show, Unprecedented. Till my next hot take, until my next exclusive content. See you on Legal AF MTN. This is Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.